Shut up and sit down.
Fire is being transmitted. Foreign companies are responding. Engine 9, Truck 4, Rescue 9, Engine 11, Engine 5, Truck 1, Battalion 7 and Rescue Squad number 1, Tyler Avenue. Crossing of Yellow Avenue and Keith Street, and then 14.
Protectors Portal Podcast brought to you by Never Give Up Solutions.
Okay.
All right.
All right, sir. So let's get started. Everybody,
Okay.
welcome to the Protectors Portal Podcast. My name is Josh Bell, your host. Today we will be interviewing Harold Bradley. Harold served in the United States Army, 740th Tank Battalion, C Company, 3rd Platoon, until December 1945. Well, I would like to welcome Harold to the show. Harold, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great.
How's it
So-
down there in Southeast Texas?
Well, this morning I woke up, got out and done a little walking, and it was 70-something degrees then. So it's
Boy, you gotta-
clear. Sun is partially shining.
So today we're going to talk about your time in World War II. You were over in Germany.
Right. All right.
Right.
Yes.
So the war started, and obviously you made a decision that you wanted to join the Army. Am I correct?
Well, yeah, I was drafted into the Army, yes.
You were drafted into the Army.
Right.
And so you had to do basic. Where was your basic training at?
Well, my basic training took place at Fort Knox, Kentucky in February of 1943. And for our basic training there, we were learning to the principles of the tank, how to drive it, and this, that, and the other, learned as part of the guns. And then all of a sudden there was something brewing in Washington that made us wonder what the heck was going on, and we didn't know exactly until we finished basic training, and they were told that we were going to be in a special project. But before that, we were given furloughs, and then we had to come back, and they told us the principles of this project, and then we had to raise our hand and sign a paper saying that we would not divulge any part of this to anybody subject to a court-martial. So we wound up in a special project, even though it was still in Fort Knox, Kentucky. Basically, that is my basic training in Fort Knox.
So that was the Desert Secret project that you had mentioned, correct?
Right. Uh-huh.
And still to this day, you probably can't talk about it. Am I correct?
No. It's been out for several. In fact, there's been books written about the whole thing, Horace.
Oh, really?
Yes,
What was
right.
What was the Desert Secret project about then?
Okay, it was originated in England. So it was called a canal defense. Oh, let's see, right now, canal defense light, and it was installed in tanks by using a carbon arc type deal, and it struck a light and reflected off of a mirror in the back of this tank, and it shone out through a slot that had been cut in a tank, which was 2 1/3 inches wide by 24 inches tall. And that project would light up the whole outside world in front of these tanks, in which it was a tank moving forward in a line that could light up dazzle the enemy, temporarily blinding me. The defense utilities of this type of a deal was at 1,000 yards. The powerful beam of the light was approximately 34 yards high, 340 yards wide. And you could take, say, 5 tanks and you could put them in a row and separate each tank, and the lights would shine out there in front of them, and your infantry boys would be in complete darkness. And therefore, the enemy couldn't see this deal. They couldn't see our boys in here, but yet we could see everything out there for yards and yards, as bright as day.
Wow.
But anyway, it got to the point in which we spent six months in the desert training in this outfit, and then we got to the point when we went overseas that they never did use it because it had to be so smooth a terrain that if you hit a hole or bombshell or something like that in it, you would lose the effect of the light, and your enemy would see all of what was going on.
So you went for the secret project, but you never got to use it overseas, correct?
That's right. We were locked in out there in the desert, and our mail was censored from time that we got out there until we left Arizona, and we couldn't even take a pass and go on a pass without being in a group of 3 to 4 people. If you were caught out of that group, you might be subject to a court-martial. Because if you got out there and got to drinking and told stories about what we was doing, then you'd be in trouble.
Wow. So after the Desert Secret Project, your basic training and whatnot, you get shipped overseas.
Right. Yep.
And your first action, where was your first action once you landed over there? You were in Europe, correct?
Yes, we were in Europe. We went directly from the United States to England, and from England, after they made the invasion of Normandy, we were sent over to landed ourselves on Utah Beach. Then we were transported from there by GI trucks all across France up into Belgium. And we were right there in Belgium when Hitler ordered this breakthrough in Belgium, and we sitting there, and we didn't have any equipment at all, any tanks we could fight with, so we were ordered to the nearest depot, which was Spearmont, Belgium, to gather some tanks. We got there, and they didn't have enough tanks to go around our company. We had to take some of the tanks that made the invasion of Normandy was there. Some of the tanks would run, but they didn't have guns in them. And some of the tanks that wouldn't run had the guns, so we had to work all night trying to get together enough tanks and guns that would work that we could go into battle, in which we went into battle on December the 19th after the breakthrough came. And guess what? We run up against Hitler's top armored man that he had handpicked to do his work there, which was Joachim Pfeiffer. Mm-hmm. And we met him head on at Spearmont, Belgium. There we fought him, stopped him, and turned him around along with the 30th Infantry Division, and forced him to start retreating. And the last we heard and seen of him was another town in Belgium called L'Église, Belgium. There he had retreated and left what equipment he had running, and used only enough equipment to transfer him back to Germany. And that was the last we seen of him. All there. So we had the pleasure of being one to stop that Hitler's top guy, and we were proud of that. Right.
So you mentioned that you were a tank commander at the age of 19. How did you come about becoming that's a young age to become a tank commander. How did you come about that?
Well, because normally, we were all, when we came in here, and they formed this Tank Battalion, was only made up of only Texas and Oklahoma boys. And we were all about approximately the same age. And, there's some boys, they just didn't, nonchalantly, they couldn't care less of what this and how they did this. But I was one that I took my job seriously, and I wasn't begging for the job, but there come time they started dividing up the tanks and getting ready to do this and that and the other. He asked me, he says, Bradley, would you like to be a tank commander? I said, well, anything to be that will help and protect my boys and we can win this war, I'm available to try anything once. He said, well, okay, you're a tank commander. At 19 years old, I was a tank commander, and I stayed that I was a tank commander throughout the rest of the war. Stayed with the same company, the same platoon until the end of the war.
Wow. Hey, so the Battle of the Bulge, December 1944.
Yes.
Wasn't that from what I have read in the past and whatnot? 1944, that winter and during that time, wasn't that the coldest winter on record?
Boy, that's what they told us over there at more than one time, boy, in December and even into January. Our tanks was, those big import medium tanks were big, but sometimes we run into places that snow and ice was froze. You could just barely crush that ice and stuff. And the snow, I felt so sorry for the infantry boys that they were having to wade that snow that was almost hip deep. And there was a lot of health issues as far as frostbite and hypothermia and what have you. Am I correct? That's right. And we invited some of the boys to, when we were moving up into battle, where there wasn't anybody firing right at then, to ride the back of our tanks. And if we got to the point where we saw or heard firing, they could get off and take positions, And boy, they didn't hesitate to take that opportunity. But I've seen pictures and stuff that where a tank. We had tanks moving along there, and the snow was just piled up on each side of it. And, I felt so sorry for those. But not only them, it was cold in them old tanks because we had no heater in them. And the big old fan that was between the turret of the tank and the engine sit right down in between there. And, boy, when that is air cooled, and when that tank was moving and that fan was going, and that cold air was coming right up through the tank commander's rear end, it was cold. I tell you for sure. But anyway,
was there during the Battle of the Bulge, didn't they have issues of supplying troops with cold weather gear?
Well, that was supposedly been, and the gear that we got for us wasn't much more than what we would normally wear in wintertime in the States. So it was really bad to the point where we were just freezing to death, even though in a tank. And trying to sleep in a tank at night like that it was something else, was.
Oh boy. So you were in Sherman tanks, am I correct?
Right. Yeah.
And the Germans had the Tiger tanks.
Right.
And that's what they had, Tigers. And what else did they have? They had a couple different styles tanks. Am I correct?
Right.
Yeah. But wasn't the Tigers? The Tiger tank was documented as probably one of the most fiercest tanks in the battlefield. Am I correct?
That's true. That is true. And believe you me, I am not one to recommend that you come up against either one of them face to face with a Sherman tank, because if you wait till they get a shot off at you, you will get the second shot. Because
right.
One of them had a 90 millimeter gun on it, the other had an 88 millimeter, and I'll tell you, if one of them hit me, I would never see the rest of the world again. But I was lucky enough that I didn't ever get hit with one. But speaking of, the 88s, I'll give you an instance. If I was being fired upon by one of them, I had rather for one to hit me at, say, 500 yards than one that would hit me at 1,000 or maybe 1,500 yards. The reason for that is the one at 500 yards, the shell would go clear through a Sherman tank and out the other side. But if it's longer than that, it would penetrate one side and it would just grind the men up in the turret. It would have enough speed left. If it wouldn't go through, but it'd grind up the soldiers in the turret up there.
I've seen stories that the Shermans used 75 millimeter. Am I correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And sometimes when a Sherman would shoot at a Tiger, there was cases where the ordnance would bounce off the Tiger tank. Am I correct?
That is correct. That is correct. We carried what we called a smoke shell in the tanks. And this was, we could outmaneuver one of those big lugs. We could outmaneuver them if we got the chance first before they got all the shot. So if we saw those, we knew we couldn't face them head on, so we would fire one of these smoke shells. And that would give us enough protection that we could maneuver around to where we might get a shot off from the side or the rear of that Tiger tank, and that way we could knock them out. Otherwise, we were dead ducks.
How about could you aim to hit like a track of a Tiger tank so you could disable the forward or reverse movement?
Right, some way that we could hit it to where we might set it on fire. And, that would be in the area of the tracks or the rear end of it.
Yeah. So after the war, you came home and whatnot, and you, went back to civilian life. Since that you had a number of family members that served in the armed forces.
Right.
And can you tell us a little bit about them?
Okay. I had a brother that was just a year and a month younger than me. He was in World War II also, but he served with the 101st Airborne Division that was trapped at Bastogne. And he received a severe wound that once they were relieved from Bastogne, they patched him up and he sent him back to the States, and he never saw any more action. Okay, I had another brother that was in the Korean conflict. He was in the Navy. He never saw much action, and according to his deal, he was more or less musically inclined, and he wound up with some kind of a band, and playing different. He could play several instruments, and he was a pretty good singer, but he come back all right. Then I had a son that was involved in the Vietnam conflict. He was in a jet aircraft maintenance part of the Air Force, and once he was sent over there to fight, he was stationed at Bangkok, Thailand, where he was in charge of 2 or 3 planes that flew into Vietnam for bombing raids, And so that portion there, he was there, and he came back and he got his discharge and went to work normally, but he had the misfortune that he fell from a cable television tower and killed himself at 31 years old. And his son, he had a son that was 5 years old when that happened, and he had another son that was 2. Well, the older boy now is in the Navy himself. He's been in the Navy for over 10 years, going on 12 years. And I have a granddaughter that her husband was in the nuclear-powered submarines in the Navy, and he spent 16 years in that portion of it. So he got out of the Navy. But anyway, I'm the only living family member still around out of my family, out of 4 of us, that was in it. I had 3 brothers, 2 brothers and a sister, and they're all gone, and I'm still around.
So you received the Purple Heart and the Silver Star regarding a particular battle you were involved in over there in Germany.
Yeah, that's right. Now, I'm proud of that. My Purple Heart was a deal that was kind of an unexpected deal because we were in between the Ruhr River and the Rhine River. And the Germans were on the run, and from what we've gathered during the time, that they had orders to fire their ammunition, and if they wanted to give up, give up. But otherwise, they didn't want them to give up before they got rid of their ammunition. But anyway, we was going along there, and there was a horse-drawn vehicle coming up on the side road, and instead of turning in to give up to us, he went the other way. And I told my gunner, I said, come around and fire some 30 caliber ammunition at that guy, and maybe he'll turn around and come back. Well, in a tank, you got two solenoid switches sitting there side by side. One operates the 30 caliber, and the other operates the 75. Now, whether my gunner got on it purposely or accidentally, but he got on the 75 millimeter. He fired that gun, and boy, his aim was good because he blew that horse, man, and everything sky high. Well, I had my hand on the recoil of that 75 millimeter gun, and when I got that gun, I looked down, and my hand, the blood was just flowing from it. I pulled the tank over, stopped, called for a medic, and got out and sat over there in the shade of a bunker. And while sitting there, I was sicker than a horse. And all of a sudden, here come 5 SS troopers out of this bunker, still had their guns with their hands over their head. They were giving up. I just pointed the way for them to go back the other way around where the prisoners were being taken, and they headed that way. Well, by the time that the medic showed up, he dressed my hand. He says, oh, hell, Bradley, you're not hurt bad enough. He said, get back in that tank and keep going. Therefore, I got a Purple Heart out of that. And anyway, it was in the line of duty and so forth and so on. But anyway, on my Silver Star, which I am really proud of, it happened on May the 1st, before Germany surrendered on May the 8th. We had orders to take 2 tanks with infantry boys. Lieutenant Tompkins took his tank, and he had 10 boys, and I took my tank, and I had 10 boys on it. So we headed out, and we went up through here, and every time we'd go through a little village, we were getting ready to make our final push, you know, for the end of the war. And every time we go through a little village, the civilians would just jump up and down and say, the Germans just left. They just left. Well, I tell you for sure, we went on through another and the same thing, but the third when we finally come to a place, and the Germans had dug in, they hit the lieutenant's tank, knocked it out, and the duck drum thing went through and cut his bow gunner or assistant driver's both legs off, killed him. Well, in the meantime, I pulled my tank around and started laying down a barrage of fire to try to protect the infantry boys that all jumped and scattered, you know. And when I did that, my 230 calibers jammed on me. So I was, a couple of weeks before that, my loader of the gun, he said, Bradley, he says, get me a gun up here on the top where I can see stuff. I can shoot at them, because when I tell you where they're at, they're gone or hid. So I got permission to install him a 30 caliber up there on top of, right in front of him. He was about 6'4", stuck out of chest deep out of that tank, you know. And he fired every box of 30 caliber we had left in that tank. And he kept the Germans pinned down. I don't know how many he killed, or we didn't go back and try to check them. But nobody else got hurt, and nobody else was wounded. We got everybody back safe. We lost that one man. And for that action, we were recommended, he and I both were recommended and received the Silver Star. People say people say you are a hero. I said, no, I may be a hero in some way, somehow, but when you get caught in a predicament like that, you do everything you can to save yourself and save as many lives as you can. So that's
right.
Is.
Absolutely. It's a do or die situation.
Right.
Yeah. So you came back from the war, and you know, when any soldier goes to conflict, goes to war, whatnot, you come back home, and you know, for the most part, you're a changed person. And how much did the war, do you think, changed you as a person, as being a 19-year-old?
Well, being a young boy, a young teenager that had just graduated from high school, I was lucky that I got to finish high school before I was drafted into the Army. And being a farm boy, it was very, very unusual to even participate or even know what was going on because we didn't have a lot of transportation to see this. But going into the Army, it transferred me from a teenage kid that didn't know anything to a man that got married during the war. That when I came back home after the war, I was so happy to be back, to have my wife still around, that the first thing I had thought about after that, I said, here, I'm a married man now. I've got to get out here and find a job to support my wife. And I was lucky enough that I went back to the same company that I was working for a couple of months before I was drafted, and they hired me back on as part of their cooperation deal. And I was a changed man from a rookie kid going into the Army to a man with a family.
Good for you.
And a lot of people said it changed their attitude. I feel like I still got the same attitude I had when I left the service, and I knew I had a good mind. And they tried to say, if you'll re-up, we'll make a lieutenant out of you. I said, no, you'll get me the same way you got me when I was drafted before.
Right. So you went back to Germany last year. In fact, from what I see, I think it was a year ago this week.
Yeah.
You went back. And how important was that trip for you to go back?
Well, actually, that wasn't my first trip back to Germany.
Okay.
Since 2004, I had never attended any of my Tank Battalion's reunion because my wife had health problems, and I just wouldn't go off and leave her. But anyway, she passed away in 2002. In 2003, I attended the first reunion, which was in Dallas, Texas, and they were planning a trip at that time to Europe. And of course, we didn't go back into Germany then. We just went to Belgium, through places we did battle, this, that, and the other. And altogether, I have made 4 trips back over there. In 2013, we went over there, and we went back into Germany then. And if you got time, I'll tell you a little story about that 2013 trip. We were sitting up there. I was in the DFW airport waiting for our flight, and I was talking to a young boy that his grandfather was in the same company with me, but his grandfather wasn't going, so he was going, and we struck up a conversation, and we were buddies all the way across that time. And when there's a PA announcer come over, he says, "Will Harold Bradley come up here to the desk?" Now, I just wondered what kind of trouble I had got myself into. But anyway, I walked up there, and the lady walked out behind the desk. She says, "Mr. Bradley says you have just been upgraded to first class to fly to Frankfurt, Germany." I said, "Well, how'd that happen?" She says, "Well, that lady right there behind that wheelchair made it possible." And I said, "Well, what's the name?" And they told me it was Dillback. And I said, "Well, that name sounds familiar, but I can't place the face." Well, it so happened that this gentleman was in the same company with me. He was at a different platoon, but he is 96 years old now. And until that time, and he went his way after the war, and I went mine, and this was the first time in 69 years that we had seen each other. And we went on this trip in 13, and then he went back again with me in 2014. And being back in Germany both those times was, I didn't expect to see their Wolfers or fighters or nothing like that. I was surprised. The majority of the people that we saw and visited with were just as friendly as they could be, and everything looked up to them and looked up to me. I was happy to be there and see this all happening, and I am proud that I was able to do it.
That's amazing. So here you are. We're in May 2015, and you're still very active. And how do you keep yourself motivated and keep going every single day?
Well, I am real fortunate. I live in a pool house back of my daughter and her son, her husband, in which I moved out here with my wife problems in 1997. And since that time, I don't sit down and hold my hands at all, Josh, because that is a bad situation for anybody retiring. I don't care what your age is. But anyway, I make a little garden. I raise tomatoes and stuff like that in it, and I take care of the flower beds and stuff like this out around my daughter's home. And got a big swimming pool out here in front of me, but I said, a good thing I don't sleepwalk. I might be in that pool at night. But anyway, I don't do that. But anyway, I get out and walk every morning, Josh. Not as much as I used to. When I retired from the daily newspaper in 1986, I started walking, and I would walk so many miles. That was back in Oklahoma, and I walked so many miles every day up there. I started having little problems. Felt some tinge in my heart deal, and I had it checked out, and I wound up having triple bypass surgery. But that didn't slow me down too much. I was in ICU one night, back out to my daughter's house on 6 days, walking up and down the driveway. But anyway, I have walked and walked and walked. And a woman asked me, well, how many miles have you walked, Mr. Bradley, since you retired? I said, I hadn't figured it up, but I went home at night and got me a calculator, and I started adding up so many this and so many that. I'd walked over 19,000 miles since I retired in 86.
Oh, my God.
And I'm still walking, Josh. I'm still walking, not that much, but I still get out every morning and limber up with a little stretching exercise, get my breakfast, head out the street I live on is a dead-end street. I don't have to worry about a lot of through traffic. I'll get out there and walk around or two on that, which is about a mile or a little over a mile every morning.
So, if you were to give advice to the younger generation today, what would you say about staying healthy and how to lead such a good life, compared to yourself?
Well, I would urge each generation, the young boys or girls, to follow their mother and father's advice. Now, so many of these people today, and I have experienced it with my daughter's teaching, that so much the parents don't care what their kids do in school anymore. And the teachers got their hands tied. They can't discipline them. My daughter tells her a lot of times that she had asked certain students in her class to bring their mother or father up here. They'd like to talk with her about their kids. They would never show up. You can't expect those kind of kids to do anything and get by. But with kids that will obey their parents, do what they're told, and work hard, I believe that they could do and keep exercising themselves, keep their minds sharp on reading and education, and head towards what they feel like that they want to do in their lifetime. If they'll do those few little things, I think that they will be happy and do what is right in this world today and help others do the same thing by following a few simple rules of eating right, exercising, and do what is best for them.
Well, I appreciate those words of advice. And everyone, if you had joined in late or whatnot, this is Harold Bradley. He served in the United States Army, 740th Tank Battalion, C Company, 3rd Platoon, until 1945. Harold is a recipient of the Purple Heart and a Silver Star. And Harold, it was an honor and a privilege to have you on here today and give us your story. It was absolutely amazing. I watch TV a lot and I read books and I think the only thing that I probably watch is documentaries of World War II, Vietnam, Korean War, and the Persian Gulf conflict. And but you guys in World War II had so much going against you, but you made it and you improvised, and it's absolutely amazing to watch those documentaries, but more so it's an honor to hear it from somebody's voice personally. And I appreciate you so much for giving me 40 minutes of your time today.
Okay. Could I say one more thing?
No, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. In April of this year, I was invited to go with this gentleman I tell you about I hadn't seen in 69 years. His daughter took me and him and another gentleman, and we went to Branson, Missouri, where they had a special services honoring all Purple Heart veterans of all the wars on a 3-day deal in Branson, Missouri, 23rd, 24th, 25th. And me and this gentleman and one other was only 3 World War II veterans able to make that trip. I guess probably 400 Purple Heart veterans was there from different wars that we have been involved in. And it was so a pleasure and honor that the 3 veterans we like so heavy.
Once again, I'd like to thank everybody who listened in to Protectors Portal podcast. You were listening to World War II veteran Harold Bradley. Harold served in the United States Army 740th Tank Battalion, C Company, 3rd Platoon until December 1945. We'd like to thank Harold for his service and dedication to the United States of America during World War II. Thanks again.
Thank you for listening to the Protectors Portal podcast brought to you by Solutions.net.